You're listening to the County Pulse on Lone Star Community Radio, KZCC, KZCW 104.5, 106.1, TV 12 on demand, and online at countypulse.org. Well, today we've got a very special guest. We have Mr. Jimmie Dotson. He is running for Woodlands Township Board of Directors, Position 2. Last week we had on Mr. Tom Chumbley, who's also running for Position 2. Again, this is going to be part of our Woodlands Township election series. We are going to try and interview every single candidate running for an open township position this year. Again, the election will be on November 3rd, with early voting running from October 13th, I believe, through October 30th. So that'll be that Friday before Halloween is when early voting will end. But I guess, Jimmie, so you have a lot of experience in law enforcement, I see. You were chief of police at the Chattanooga Police Department from 1997 to 2004, chief of police at Houston ISD from 2009 to 2014. And correct me if I'm wrong, but you were able to reduce the crime rate in Houston ISD by 46% and criminal citations on students by 60%. Is that right? Did I get that right?
That's correct, Jack.
Wow, that's a pretty impressive number. You don't hear statistics like that too often in crime and stuff like that, so that's really cool. Also, you're also a deacon at Crossroads Baptist Church, and you've served that position since 2005?
Yes.
Good. All right, so you obviously are pretty well qualified. You have quite a bit of community leadership experience, so I guess you just want to talk about everything in your life that's led up to you running, like your education, and maybe elaborate more on your law enforcement leadership positions?
I'd be honored to do that. First of all, let me thank you and Isabella for letting me be your guest this evening. I'm very humbled to know that as I see such great leaders as you, our future is going to be in great hands. And I commend you for what you're doing, and I urge you to continue to do what you're doing. God is blessing you with some great skills. One of the greatest skills that we can bless with is the skill of communication. So I urge you to continue to take those skills that God has blessed you with and use them to glorify Him as you reach out to what you're doing today with me.
Thank you.
I am very blessed to be here because of the fact that I have had 46 years of law enforcement experience. I've also been married to my beautiful wife for 46 years. So the same year that I became a police officer, I got married that same year. And I've had the ability to serve 24 years in the Houston Police Department, where I started off as a street officer, working in patrol, and was able to complete my career as the executive assistant chief of police. And at that time, I was recruited to come to Tennessee to serve as the police chief. And I served there for almost 6.5 years. And during that time, I was able to be blessed to have a great staff around me and great men and women that served the city of Chattanooga. And we, too, were able to achieve quite a few things by reducing the violent crimes by 20%, reducing the homicides by 50%, also being able to manage and lead a police department that became nationally accredited by the national police standards across America, and we're able to do that in 2 years. And so ultimately, I was able to complete everything that I was tasked to do, completed all the goals, and then I was blessed to move back to the Woodlands. Prior to going to Chattanooga, we had lived in the Woodlands for almost 15 years in the village of Panther Creek. And so when we moved back to the Woodlands in 2005, we moved to Sterling Ridge. And there we were able to build our dream house, and we lived there for about 4 years until we decided we built too much house. So we needed to downsize and get a one-story. And so this is where we reside now in the village of Creekside Park. But during those periods after we moved back to the Woodlands, I was asked to design and implement a public safety management plan to help them be able to manage their law enforcement through contracts that they had with Montgomery County, as well as the Harris County Precinct 4. So we were blessed to be able to draft that and design it as well as implement it through the community policing philosophy. And that is still being used today here in the Woodlands and ultimately throughout a major part of Montgomery County. So shortly after completing that, I was blessed to be called to be the police chief at Houston Independent School District. So I was able to go there for 6 years, and as you stated earlier, we were able to reduce 46% of the crimes that was occurring throughout the district, as well as reducing the number of citations that the students were issued by working with the administration and working with the principals and the staff in the various schools where a lot of those issues were taking place. So we were able to reduce that by 60%, because what we were doing was that we were basically criminalizing our own students. And so we had to find a different strategy that the teachers could intervene without having to have police intervene. So after that, I was able to join a consulting firm, which is made up of two other police chiefs who were serving school districts in Philadelphia and in Baltimore. So we started our own consulting business where we train school districts in security as well as universities and churches. And so also we were able to do that at such a great stage that we also consulted with International Association of Chiefs of Police, where we go in and we work with chiefs of different cities to help them who are going through various challenges with their departments, to help them make sure that they could overcome whatever challenges they were going through. So that's basically my career, and I was blessed to be able to be a part of a lot of new things. And when I was in Houston as a young officer, two other officers and myself started the Crime Stoppers program, a national award-winning Crime Stoppers, where the city of Houston have been the leading city in America when it comes to the Crime Stoppers program. So we were able to start that back in 1980. And then ultimately, I was blessed to be able to go to Los Angeles and train with the Los Angeles Police Department, where I was able to come back and train the entire Houston Police Department on the use of alternative weapons, which would be the baton or the nightstick, if you might understand what I'm talking about, which is a weapon you can use without having to use deadly force. So we did that and trained the entire Houston Police Department. We started the first physical fitness program in the Houston Police Department. And then as Assistant Chief of Police, we were able to launch one of the first major gang programs, started at the West Side Police Station, which is out off of Derry, Ashford. And so we were blessed to really be a part of a lot of things throughout my career. And so that's why I want to serve in our community on the board of directors from position 2, because I want to bring those 46 years of my experience as a police chief, but also those years that I served in the various nonprofit agencies here in Montgomery County, as well as in Houston and while I was in Chattanooga. So here in Montgomery County, I was able to serve on the Interfaith Woodlands Board of Directors. I served on the Montgomery County Women's Center and the Montgomery County Library District. At the time, we had a 100 Club of Montgomery County, which no longer is here. It merged with the Houston area Montgomery County, Houston area Harris County, greater area 100 Club. I served on the Concerned Citizens Against Drugs. It was a task force that was organized in Conroe. And then I served on the task force for our strategic planning for the CISD board. And then I currently serve on Inspirational Ranch board, which is a therapy, equine therapy agency that we serve those special need people who can get some therapy by riding horses and being able to have a great relationship sometime with the horses. And so that's why I want to serve, because I want to bring all of those experiences to our board and be a voice for our residents in the Woodlands. As a police chief, you always had to stand on your personal integrity. And I want to be able to do that as a police chief, because there's going to be some changes that will be taking place in our community, and some that we need to make sure that all of our residents are aware of. And one of the things that I've always tried to demonstrate as a public safety leader and as a servant is stand on your integrity, so that when you do speak, you speak from truth. And I want to make sure that that happened when I ascend to the board of the township. And so that's where I stand at this time. I want to bring those skills that I've been blessed by God to our community. And if our residents want me, then I'm here to serve them. So thank you again for giving me this opportunity to just share my experiences with you.
Of course, yes. So again, you listed off way more qualifications than I was able to research about you. Again, well, you said that you co-founded Crime Stoppers. Was that
Yes.
right? Wow. Okay, so
Yes.
that's the same Crime Stoppers that
Yes.
they put on the news at night saying, "Call this number if."
That's the very one.
Wow. Okay.
The very one. To show you how good God can be, when we first started that Crime Stoppers, all we had was 3 desks and a trash can. And so now they have their own building. They've built their own building, and it's become one of the national leading Crime Stoppers in our nation today. Basically, it started off with just a symposium. The other 2 officers and myself traveled over to Austin and heard the presentation that was given, because they would start trying to implement one in Texas. And so we were able to take that information back to the Houston Police Department, and we implemented that. And originally, when we started it, some of the officers didn't believe in it because they thought it was just fluff. As they say, they thought it was a pie in the sky, until we were able to solve the very first homicide that Crime Stoppers received information on. It was a tip that came into us, and we turned that tip over to the detectives in homicide. And basically, the information that was given to us, it led to those detectives able to solve that homicide. And from that point on, it gained credibility throughout the Houston Police Department. And as you can see, it's renowned today as we speak.
Wow. Yeah. So, I guess back, you said when you moved back here, or moved here in 2005?
Moved back in 2005, yes.
Okay. And you said that you were on a committee that formed the contract model, right, that they use today?
Well, it wasn't a committee, it was me, a committee of one.
Oh, okay.
I was hired by the community associations of the Woodlands at that time. It's now under the umbrella of the township. But it was, at that time, I was hired by President Don Norrell, who asked me to come and draft that design so that they could know how much law enforcement they really needed, because they were paying money for what they didn't know what they were paying for. So we were able to take that plan by going out and doing surveys and hearing the business owners say what they wanted in their law enforcement services. And so we draft that particular and design that plan based upon what the residents wanted, what the business and entrepreneurs wanted, and what all of our leaders in our community wanted, who lived in the Woodlands and worked in the Woodlands. And we designed it around the community policing philosophy. And not only were we able to write it and design it, but we worked with the Sheriff's Department, Sheriff Tommy Gage, who was the sheriff at that time, and we implemented that. And today it's very successful, because community policing is what we in law enforcement need as the foundation of the stand on in order to build partnerships with the citizens and residents we serve.
Okay. And yeah, I remember they still, and right now with like incorporation especially, there's the big question in the air, which I remember they made the decision to do a hybrid transition model, is what they call it. Should the Woodlands incorporate? I mean, if the Woodlands were to be up for vote for incorporation, they'd use a hybrid transition model. But so the reason the Woodlands hired you, just so that I know and anyone that has any questions knows. So at the time, we weren't even a township, but when we became a township, is that when we started having to pay the county for services, or was it before that?
It was before you became a township. I drafted this plan in 2006 and 2007, and it did not become a township until later on. So they were able to take the plan that we drafted and just incorporate that into the township as we know it now. In fact, when I drafted the plan, the additional police, the supplemental police that we were contracting with, was only about $2.9 million when I completed that plan. And as you know now, it's well over $13 million.
Right.
And that's one of the reasons why I want to ascend to the board to help our board manage that plan, so that as we go further in down the road, then if we need more police, we need somebody on that board who has experience as a law enforcement executive who can determine exactly how much law enforcement services we need. And so we don't want to pay for something that we don't need, but we also want to pay for something that we do need, because it's ultimately critical that we keep a safe community. And having someone who can identify what the needs are and work with the sheriff and the constable over in precinct 4 to identify what our needs are and come alongside them to make sure that, number one, we're providing adequate, equal to or greater than the services that we have right now that is affordable. That's the main thing.
Right.
Yeah, and I think your background's incredibly extensive in law enforcement. And if you secure the position, you'll be the only town director that actually has experience in law enforcement. So that brings a whole new set of unique skills to the township that we've never had before. So that's really awesome. On your website, it had said that, or in an interview with the Houston Chronicle, it said that diversity brings fresh and unique perspectives as needed. Can you elaborate on that quote from you about how your diversity will change the township?
Well, first of all, you look at me, who I am. If I'm elected, I'll probably be the only person up there with this type of complexion. But not just my skin color that I bring. I bring my diversity of thinking. Because I believe that as a police chief, you have to think outside of the box. You have to be able to interact and build partnerships and relationships with people of different races and genders and political persuasions and backgrounds. And that's the strength that I bring to the board. And as a board member, I want to be able to, what I have always considered myself, a transformational leader. And by that, I mean being able to work with the team that you are assigned to reach and achieve the goals successfully. Allow those debates to take place, whatever position an individual stand on, but at the end of the day, come to a consensus to where everyone is empowered to own whatever that final decision is as a body, as a team. And that's how I've always led police departments that I have been in charge of, that we are a team, that there's no one individual, unless it is the chief of police, who stands out and takes responsibility for failures. But when there are successes, he gives that to the team. Let them own the successes and the chief own the failures. And that is how I would like to operate, even though we would be a team of 7 members on that board. But I want to operate within that board to where we can achieve great success for the residents. Because if you don't work together, then the residents are the ones who's going to end up being liking for the services. So that board should be able to collaborate, work together, and achieve the goals, whether you agree to it or not, but you should have the responsibility to own it in order for the residents to receive the benefits.
Awesome. Thank you. That's a great answer.
Yeah, so just real quick, I wanted to talk more. So I saw your position on incorporation on your website, and you don't necessarily have to talk about that right now, but it's a good thing that we have somebody with law enforcement background, because anything, like literally everything that I've seen in the news over the past few months and even over the past year, it has to do with something about what type of policing model that we're going to choose. And I know we've already made that, they already voted for that, to use that hybrid transition model, which actually, just a quick side note, if you guys are interested in learning more about contract policing, Captain Dan Zientek with the Precinct 3 Constable's Office hosts a show on the stations Thursdays at 1 called Crime Scene Today. You can go to irlonestar.com and visit that if any of you guys want to learn more about contract policing. But anyways, yeah, so it's a good thing that you're going to be coming on, that you're bringing all this leadership experience in law enforcement to the table, because, again, like I said, all the news has been about what's going to happen with our contract with the county and everything, should we choose to incorporate. But so I do see that you're opposed to incorporation, and you actually picked a pretty good reason for it, being not being sure how it would necessarily benefit the community, which that's a very interesting way to think about it, because I know many people just seem to be pro-incorporation for no reason, really. I haven't heard too many of the benefits other than maybe some different tax revenue sources. But do you just want to go over incorporation, why you're against it and whatnot? I know that's kind of like a...
No, I'm glad, Jack, that you brought that up. And thank you for giving me the opportunity to explain that. First of all, let me just correct you. They have not decided on which style of police department they want. There's three. They have, which is the contract, which we currently have right now. They have talked about the hybrid model, and then they've talked about the full service model. The contract is what we pay in addition to what we get from the Montgomery County Sheriff's Department. Okay, so we contract out with additional 80 plus officers to supplement what we have from the county. The hybrid model is a combination of that and hiring your own police officers to kind of halfway start up your police department. In other words, you'd have half of your department would probably be officers that's hired, paid for, and fully employed by the township, and the other half would be on contract. Then you have the full service model, which is the Woodlands on everything. They pay for everything: salaries, equipment, benefits, it all. And my rationale for saying no incorporation now, first of all, we have 2 years before we have to make a decision on that.
Right.
But I want to make sure that when that time comes, that the residents are the ones who's pushing that to say, let's discuss it. And when we do discuss it, let's give them all of the facts, the good, the bad, and the ugly, so that they will know what they're going to be paid for. Right now, we have a draft plan. It's not a complete plan. So there has been several consultants who come along and give recommendations, but it's nothing that is firmly established until the residents say, this is what we want. So we have to make sure that the residents know exactly what the cost is going to be, not just for 2022, when it can come back up for a discussion again, but from 2022 beyond. And as a police chief and a police executive who has served in cities and who have been on commissions that have gone around the country and monitored other police departments, I want our citizens to realize that it's just not the salaries and the equipment that you pay for when you start up a police department. You have to pay for their courts that's attached to that. You have judges, you have clerks, you have a jail, you have all the other equipment on top of that. And then you have to have some liabilities that's going to cover lawsuits.
Right.
And I don't know if you read the most recent paper in the media, but the city of Louisville yesterday paid out $12 million for a lawsuit in the death in custody of Breonna Taylor.
Bro, yeah, right. I read about that.
Okay? Now, that's just one lawsuit. That's one. That's $12 million. There's always an escalating clause in lawsuits as you go down the road. So there may be other lawsuits. Not saying that we're going to have lawsuits, but you got to prepare for that. I don't want you and Isabella, if you plan to live in the Woodlands for the next 10 to 15 years, or however long you choose, I don't want to leave that debt on you.
Right.
So that if we do incorporate, let's make sure that we pay as we go. So don't go out there and build a police department based upon credit. Build one that you can afford year in and year out and be able to accumulate funding for it for the next 5 years as you do your strategic plan. So I want the citizens to know that. So somebody have to put up a stop sign. And I guess I will be that stop sign. I'm always used to being a cop to say, wait, let this traffic come by. Okay, the other traffic can come by. So if I'm going to be cop, let me be the police chief that will control the information that people need to have and give them everything. Fully disclose every inch, every dollar, every penny that it's going to cost them. And you do it based upon projections. And then you do it in such a way that it does not leave heavy debt on the next generation.
Right.
And that's my position that I'm taking. I'm not no Jimmie, no. I'm a no Jimmie, wait and let's see.
Right.
And then when you get the information, if the residents are ready to move forward with it, I'm not going to stand in their way. But until that time, I have to say, let's just take a deep breath and see where we are, see what the cost is going to be, and then divulge all of the information that we will have to the residents.
Right. And you're definitely right about everything being based on like credit, us having to take out loans and everything. There's a ton of hidden costs to starting like a police department. I don't know if you mentioned this. I don't know if I'm going to be correct saying this, but we'd have to have like again a whole like detectives division and like crime lab and stuff.
Yes.
And right now it's with the county, and theirs is huge, and they have way more resources than even we would have. So there's a lot of smaller stuff, like you said, again, other than salaries and one time or maybe once every 5-10 years equipment purchases that we have to do. And there's, I mean, even with equipment purchases, there's some equipment now. I know the newest tasers and like body cams. I don't know if you're familiar with the company Axon. You have to buy them on a subscription now. The newest ones they made. So, I mean, even that would be on a subscription. So it would just, you'd have to have you'd have to know the exact amount of money that you'd be able to spend each year, which again is pretty hard to predict when you have all these unknown costs. And again, as you said, liability and such coming along.
There's another thing that I think the citizens probably need to know too, that when you start your own police department, and you're responsible for everything, and then you start looking that there may be gaps in your budget, some small towns have what they consider speed traps or revenue enhancement to try to fill the gap in the budget through policing. That is wrong. That should never happen in any city, and I certainly don't want to see that happen here in Montgomery County. So that's why I said, let's pay as we go. Let's plan. Let's prepare for at least 5 to 10 years out to make sure that we've got a budget that will support a fully staffed police department or a hybrid, whatever it is that the citizens decide they want. Then I want them to make sure that they have all of the facts.
Right, and that's important. I mean, there's been, even locally, with a lot of stuff, there's always misinformation, like with that Conner ISD school bond. I remember that was a mess. Hearing all the news about that and everything. And this, too, it's been a mess. So it's always good getting the facts out there and everything.
Yeah. I have a question for you. Do you mind
Yes.
going into how your campaign was affected by the pandemic? And like maybe some
Yeah.
of the tribulations you faced?
Well, right now it's impacted because I don't have the opportunity to do a lot of face-to-face meetings.
Yeah.
Most of my meetings are conducted on Zoom. I have had some one-on-one meetings with my mask on. I have been able to attend some luncheons with my mask on. And then I'm looking forward to the chamber forum that's coming up on the 29th. That will be in person. And of course, we will be social distancing. But it's a little difficult this time around because of the social distancing, and a lot of people won't answer the door if you come and knock on the door just to give them a push card. So you have to be careful with those things. And I certainly understand that, and I will respect that. But right now, we have to depend a lot on social media
Right.
as well as on the Zoom and platforms such as what we're doing here now.
Yeah, for sure. I have a couple friends who block walk for some political candidates that are running, and
Yeah.
it's decreased a lot. A lot of people won't answer their doors, won't come out,
Yes,
and that
absolutely.
must be a really difficult challenge right now.
Yes, it is. It is.
Yeah, adding on to the block walking thing. That's people stopped that, and now they're just doing phone banking
Yes.
from home,
Yeah.
Yes.
which is it's a lot, but definitely, especially. I mean, I guess the benefit of having to do most online stuff is that you're attracting like the younger crowd who's just starting to get into, who just turned 18, became legal age to vote and everything, because you'd be surprised on our population how much like what they see online from candidates makes a difference. Like
Yes.
hardly does anybody go in person to any type of like forums or anything like you said. So yeah, it's definitely been, but I mean, it's good to hear that you've been able to do at least some Zoom meetings. I remember you participated in one with what was it? I think the organization is called like the Woodlands. It's Future something. I forget the exact name.
Township Future?
Township
Yes.
Future. Right there. You go.
Yes. Yes. Uh-huh.
And again, you're here with us right now. But
Yes.
I guess anything else, I guess, related to you, reasons behind you running other than law enforcement, like any other issues that you want to touch on? I mean, yesterday with Mr. Chumbly, we touched on a lot of issues, but those were, I guess, more specific to his concerns. I just want to know if you have like any other concerns that you want to address or anything.
Well, certainly. Besides the public safety issue in law enforcement, and of course, I've already mentioned my position that I've taken against incorporation and why. But the other issue that I want to make sure is how do we keep our financial base stabilized as we are going through this pandemic? Because we do have some of our businesses that are being negatively impacted tremendously.
Right.
And we have to make sure that we can't just fund all of our services based upon real estate taxes. And so we have to make sure that the largest part of our funding source is from sale taxes. And so because of the pandemic, a lot of our sale taxes from the brick and mortar stores have decreased. But the sale taxes from online purchases have increased. So we don't know how long that's going to last. But as the trickle down theory says, it's not all trickling down to those small businesses that we need and to keep the employees employed. So that's a major concern of mine as well. And I want to do whatever I can with my leadership skills and my experiences in law enforcement, as well as being able to help with the economic development partnership when they go out and try to recruit new businesses. I want to be along with them to take that message about public safety when they look at the Woodlands, because we didn't get the distinction of being one of the best livable cities in the nation by just osmosis. A lot of hard work went into that. And I commend the current board for the great work that they've done, as well as those other different agencies that have supported them, as well as the township staff. done a great job, but there's always room for improvement. And as I looked at my life and realized that I have something to offer as we go forward, then I'm offering myself to the residents to say, here I am. If you want to hire me to be a part of that board, I'm available.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's definitely a big issue that most people are starting to sort of like forget about because we're sort of getting used to not going out to eat all the time and everything. But I mean, if you go around, like right now in our studio, there's a business, like a shop next door that we share space with. And I've been here, I've been here probably a couple dozen times in the past 5 months and hardly even seen a person walk through the doors. So all of these local businesses are struggling. And
Yes.
and I mean, Luby's recently had to completely liquidate everything. And Sweet Tomatoes, I remember, they had to liquidate everything. And it was kind of sad because Luby's was sort of like a big icon in Southeast Texas where we are. But, yeah. But do you have anything else to add, like any of your concerns or anything to address? I know we talked a lot about incorporation and everything.
Well, the other concern that I'm very much concerned with is our flooding and fresh
Right.
water sources. As you know, we have had some flooding, especially here in Creekside Park. But we have to find a way to mitigate that so that it doesn't impact any other parts of the woodlands. But the other concern that I have is our water supply. Currently, we have water that we get water from the ground source as the surface water. And so there's going to be a challenge that we're going to be facing probably sooner than later, how we want to continue to get fresh water. Because as you drill more water from the ground, you're causing the ground to subside more. And when the ground subsides, you have a tendency to create fault lines. And when those fault lines occur, it's going to impact people's homes and houses and businesses. So that's another concern of mine. Even though the township board doesn't have direct oversight over that, but we can work with the San Jacinto River Authority and all the other different entities that do have jurisdiction over groundwater and fresh surface water, as well as flooding, to make sure that we have representatives at the table to mitigate those issues so that we can go into the future not having to be concerned about whether or not we're going to get fresh water and where we're going to get it from, but develop and work with the plans that some of those organizations have already worked with, and the ones that we feel is best for the woodlands and surrounding areas, that's what we should work with. But that is another major concern of mine, too.
That's very interesting. I think that's something that a lot of people fail to even consider, are fresh water sources.
Yes.
That's one of the things that we take for granted, too. Also about flooding, too. That's like definitely a big concern that while we haven't had like a big major tropical storm, we almost did, but thankfully it spared us. Well, we haven't had one of those in a while. People have sort of forgot about how bad it was, like with Tropical Storm Harvey and everything. Because I remember I went down to Creekside Park area. The neighborhood starts with a T. I can't remember the name of it, but
Tiburon,
yes, that was really, really bad. I mean, remember there was some homes. One of my friend's homes, her family's home took on like 3 feet of water in it.
Yes.
And I mean, their house is kind of elevated too, so it came all the way up the driveway and came 3 feet up against the wall in their home. So flooding has become a major issue, and especially seeing that we're not done yet with hurricane season and all that good stuff. We're just hoping that we're going to get spared this year.
Mm-hmm.
But do you have anything else to add?
No, I just, again, want to thank you very much for inviting me to be your guest on your show. And again, let me commend you for the great work that you guys do. I know that a lot of people have a lot of concerns about the next generation, But when I see what you two are doing, I don't have those concerns because I know that our future is in great hands. And I encourage you to continue to do the great work, serve the community that you are living in, and wherever God leads you, serve Him first and foremost. And when you serve God, you're serving your neighbors.
Right.
So thank you for what you do. I commend you, and I just encourage you to continue on.
Thank you.
Thank you. We appreciate that. And thank you for joining us, too. Definitely enjoyed talking with you, and especially about your experience. Again, still very impressive, and looks like you would definitely bring a lot of leadership experience to the table. Do you have anything else to add?
No, I just appreciate you for joining us. It was really interesting.
Well, thank you very much to both of you.
Thank you. And, you're welcome to come back on anytime if you want to talk about anything. We're always open and ready to have guest talent on here.
Thank you.
But if that's it, you're listening to the County Pulse on 104.5 KZCC Conroe and 106.1 KZCW Willis, and online at irlonestar.com. See you guys next week.
Three blondes in a ragtop Mustang followed us down to the lake and didn't have to think about that too long. Skinny dipping in the bright moonlight, situation couldn't be more right. I can feel a good one coming on. Yeah, we're gonna roll all night. We're gonna get the feeling right. We're gonna keep this party rocking till the break of dawn. Yeah, I can feel a good one. Feel like a good one. I can feel a good one coming on.